The sound of tearing fabric and suppressed laughter filled the still air behind the gas station. The sun was bright and merciless, glaring down on a scene no one should ever have to see. Officer Mara Collins stood with her back against the wall, her pulse pounding in her throat, her uniform being ripped apart by two men who thought they owned the world, because no one had stopped them yet. Her breath came in shallow gasps, her body trembling between fear and disbelief. She had faced guns before, stood over bodies before, but never like this. Never this helpless. Never stripped of dignity under the daylight sky. Her mind raced through training, through the warnings her father once gave her. Never let them see fear, Mara. Fear gives power. But fear had already won. Her heart screamed for help, and yet no one came. The sound of traffic beyond the corner of the gas station seemed to mock her silence. The faint hum of engines passing by was a reminder that life carried on while she was trapped in this small hell. If you're watching this on, and you believe compassion and courage still matter in this world, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Because stories like this remind us that goodness can arrive from the most unexpected directions. Mara's morning had begun calmly. A call about a suspicious vehicle near the edge of town, a quiet, routine stop. The gas station stood along a highway that led nowhere special. The kind of place with clean asphalt, faded red trim, and a few vending machines baking in the sun. She'd pulled in just to check, to look, to be sure. But the vehicle was bait, a trap left by 5 men who had been watching her patrols for weeks. They weren't after her badge. They were after humiliation, revenge for an arrest she'd made months ago that had put one of their friends behind bars. The leader, a man named Vince Harrow, had eyes like broken glass, sharp, hollow, reflecting nothing but bitterness. He was the one who grabbed her first, sneering at her as if her uniform were a joke. He and his crew, each one worse than the other, had cornered her behind the station, away from cameras, away from the view of passing cars. She could smell oil, fuel, and heat rising off the concrete. The sun made everything too visible, too cruelly honest. Vince had once been a mechanic, the kind who fixed bikes for a living. But a year in jail had turned him into something else, a man who blamed everyone but himself. He wanted the world to feel as powerless as he had behind those bars. Now, with Mara pinned against the wall, he laughed like a man finally in control again. She remembered her daughter, little Ellie, 5 years old, waiting at her grandmother's house, drawing pictures of Mommy the hero. The thought nearly broke her. She wasn't supposed to cry. Cops didn't cry. But the tears came anyway, stinging her eyes, mingling with dust and fear. One thug filmed it all, phone shaking with excitement. Another clapped and cheered. The rest just stared, hollow with adrenaline and cruelty. It was broad daylight, yet the world felt darker than it ever had. The badge on her chest caught the sunlight, a small glimmer of what she had once believed in, now dimming by the second. Then came the sound. At first, just a low rumble, faint, far away, like thunder rolling over dry ground. The laughter faltered. One of the men looked up toward the highway, squinting. The sound grew louder. Engines, heavy ones, roaring in rhythm, coming closer. The kind of sound you feel in your chest before your ears can name it. And then they appeared, 6 men walking in formation from the edge of the asphalt where the highway met the lot. Their boots hit the ground with quiet certainty. Their vests bore the familiar patches that made people either move aside or whisper, "The Hells Angels." They weren't riding. They were walking. Their motorcycles parked just behind, gleaming like steel guardians under the sun. At their front walked a man who looked carved from gravel and fire, thick salt and pepper beard, slicked back undercut, eyes like ice that had seen too much. His tattooed arms moved with slow control, each step measured. Vince laughed nervously, trying to mask fear. "You boys lost?" he called out, but his voice cracked halfway through. The angels didn't answer. They didn't need to. The air changed as they came closer, sunlight catching their leather vests, revealing the weight of stories and roads behind every crease. The leader stopped about 15 feet away, his gaze fixed on Mara, then on the men around her. There was no rush, no show of violence, just silence that hurt worse than shouting. Mara felt her breath catch, hope flickering where it had nearly died. The angels weren't there by coincidence. The leader, Reed Calloway, had seen something from the highway minutes earlier, a small shape of blue and black pinned against a wall while men jeered. It reminded him of another day, another place. When his own daughter, back before prison, before the gang, before the regret, had called him crying because someone wouldn't leave her alone after school. He hadn't been there for her then. He'd been on a run, chasing a fight that didn't matter. By the time he came back, she was gone from his life for good. He hadn't seen her in 8 years. He wasn't about to walk past another daughter of someone's heart. Not again. Mara's lips trembled as Vince turned toward his crew. "Let's go," he muttered, suddenly less confident. But one of the angels, a bald giant with a beard down to his chest, stepped forward, his shadow stretching long across the asphalt. "She's not going anywhere with you," he said, his voice steady, gravelly. For a moment, everything froze, the cop trembling, the thugs uncertain, the angels unmoving yet unstoppable. Then Vince's rage flared. He swung his arm, more out of pride than sense, but Reed caught it midair, his tattooed hand closing around Vince's wrist like a vice. The sudden strength in that grip made the younger man's face twist with shock. No words followed, just a shove, not to harm, but to end it. Vince stumbled back, fell hard, his phone clattering against the ground, the screen flashing the last frame it had recorded. The others backed off, muttering curses, realizing they were outmatched, not by weapons, but by conviction. The laughter stopped. The game was over. Mara fell to her knees, trembling as adrenaline drained from her body. The ripped fabric of her uniform fluttered in the light breeze. Reed crouched down, his rough voice low, telling her to take a breath, to stand if she could. She looked up, eyes filled with tears that weren't just from fear anymore. They were from the strange, overwhelming relief of being seen, of being protected. When she thought she was invisible, he handed her back the torn fabric that had once been her shield. She took it with shaking hands. Behind them, the rest of the angels stood guard. Not posing, not speaking, just forming a quiet wall of protection between her and the world. For the first time that day, the sound of engines in the distance felt safe, not threatening. Reed looked at her badge for a moment, then nodded. He didn't need thanks. He didn't need forgiveness for what his patch once meant. Maybe this was a small redemption, a quiet apology to his daughter, wherever she was. As Mara stood, the sun caught the corner of her badge again. It shone this time, brighter, warmer, real. She met Reed's gaze and managed to nod, one officer to one outlaw, two people who had both lost too much to remain unchanged. The angels turned back toward their motorcycles. Engines ignited, thunder spreading through the air again. The ground vibrated beneath her boots as they rode off, their silhouettes cutting across the blue horizon, fading into the open road. Mara stood there for a long time, holding her torn uniform together, staring after them. She didn't know their names. She didn't know where they came from. But she knew one thing. The line between sinner and savior was thinner than she'd ever imagined. Sometimes the people you're told to fear are the ones who show up when no one else does. If this story touched your heart and reminded you that courage and compassion can come from the most unexpected souls, please support by liking, commenting, and sharing this story. Your engagement helps us bring more light into dark places. Before we end, tell us in the comments, what does redemption mean to you? Because as Mara watched those bikes disappear into the daylight, she understood something she'd never been taught in the academy, that kindness doesn't always wear a uniform, and salvation doesn't always come with sirens. Sometimes, it roars in on two wheels, wearing black leather and carrying the ghosts of the past toward something better. And under the bright sky, for the first time in a long while, she finally felt safe.